Story time. I was struggling with how to handle my anger well. My husband would say something to me that, while not truly the same, felt too similar to things said to me when I was young. Sometimes it wasn't even what he said, but how he said it, or the expression on his face when he spoke. Opposite of how I responded as a child, which was to completely shut down and crawl inside of myself, I flipped out instead. As I learned how to respond to my anger, I realized that underneath I had been triggered, and there were steps I could take to calm myself down, reminding myself that this situation was not the same. I was safe, and I had the opportunity to be different than what had been modeled for me most of my life. Mann holds a wealth of information about this area of triggers. She is a survivor of sexual trauma and a licensed psychotherapist, running her outpatient private practice for nearly 25 years in Colorado. She has dedicated her life to helping victims find voice and confidence in her therapy and in her training of advocates in the United States and elsewhere. In her passion to prevent childhood sexual abuse, she is also a trained and certified facilitator with Darkness to Light. Mary Ellen has an advanced degree from Columbia University and is an active believer in Jesus. She lives in Denver with her loving husband and sons. To learn more about her approach and experience, please find her website linked in the show notes. There you will find more information about resources she uses in her psychotherapy practice, along with information about abuse and trauma as it relates to interpersonal and organizational abuse. So Mary Ellen, welcome. And I want to jump right in and get us started by defining and offering clarification on a very popular word that we're hearing often right now.
Yeah.
So would you please give us some background? What is a trigger?
So a trigger is something that happens in the environment. It could be a smell, a taste, an object that we're looking at, an experience we're having with another person. And the trigger is going to basically kind of automatically move us into an anxious spot. So I would suggest, like, we have healthy anxiety and then we can have distorted anxiety. Now, the big idea, though, just anatomically speaking, is that anxiety is going to push, us into a fight, flight, freeze, and then a new F word, not a bad word, but a new F word is fawning. And so to explain that, so we get it combative as our fight, or we get really like, what did you mean by that? Or what were you thinking? Or we can kind of get into a blaming space and be, again, combative. The flight is avoidant. I won't ever talk to that person again. I won't ever go to that place again. I'll never talk about that again. Well, I just will do whatever I can to avoid ever thinking about that again. And the frozen is just feeling numb or doing things that are numbing so that our body is, if you will, kind of developing an anesthetized feeling to ward off the anxiety and the sense of threat and danger. And the fawning is the kind of the active, it's a very endorsed reaction that we have, like serve everybody, accommodate everybody, say yes, not no, don't offend, don't set limit, make sure you are people pleasing. Maybe even rescuing is a fawning mode. Making excuses for people is a fawning mode. So we have those 4 Fs that define the body's experience of a trigger. But a trigger can be anything that can unconsciously or consciously earmark an event where we felt threatened. So a trigger can be traffic, being stuck in traffic. It can be someone cuts me off, while I'm driving. It could be smelling, someone's cologne and remembering just that sense of threat from a historical event. It could be a Bible verse. It could be a song. It could be a joke someone thinks they're making that's just a super casual experience. And then they're saying words like chick and whore or, and all of a sudden we're just like, pulled into a high anxiety space. It could be a way we are touched or not touched. There could be, a trigger in the sense like we feel confused or gaslit, which is we feel like I was trying to say something and now the person is like making me feel crazy. So that can be a trigger. So that's a dynamic trigger, like between people. Yeah, it could be a sense of pain in the body or a doctor's appointment, where we're having to get evaluated for something, dental, or say, an annual exam. So we are triggered because our body is kind of re-experiencing vulnerability at some level.
Absolutely. I'm so fascinated by this topic personally. And partially the reason is because I've noticed changes in my own self and how I respond to triggers. And I've been thinking through, is it more related to my own process, like continued healing in my journey where I'm changing? And so therefore the way I respond to a trigger is changing. Or does the way I respond to a trigger sometimes depend on the person who's triggering me and how I respond to that specific individual? Yeah. And it's something I have curiosity around. Would you be able to speak to that a little bit?
If you're changing, yes, I can tell you that people have told me I used to not be this, they'll say sensitive to this problem. And now I'm so sensitive. And they feel like it's a regression, but it's actually your body is somehow experiencing like the permission. Maybe you're an adult, you have more choices. Maybe your life is safer. And so what happens when we get more, if you will, triggered, we're not really regressing as much as we're moving past the idea that we're stuck, trapped, cannot speak, silenced, have to be numb, have to accommodate, all of those things. And so we're getting more real, right? Like we're getting more congruent. And congruency just simply, and probably a lot of your listeners already know what this means, but congruency is just my insides really do flesh out and match my outsides. So that joke is now not funny, and I'm in touch with that joke is offensive to me. So sometimes when we're shifting, like back when I'm 18, that joke would not have offended me. Now I'm 35 and that joke offends me. Back when I'm 16, traffic doesn't bother me, but now that I'm 40, traffic really bothers me. So it's not a regression as much as it is your body feeling the permission to show you how much you've had an embedded, stress and trauma and sense of threat. So there's that. I think also that can include, like you mentioned at the end, the dynamic, like someone is now talking to me. I feel more sensitive to a pastor. I feel more sensitive to someone in authority. I feel more sensitive to, say, an old friend. This happens a lot. Like people will come to me and they're like, I feel like I can't tolerate, excuse me, my friendships I developed when I was in a more traumatized state. So those friendships were used to maybe laughing at you and you kind of let them. And now you're like, I don't want you laughing at me. I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to feel subjected or dominated. There can be a shift. It feels like I'm getting more sensitive, so I'm breaking, and I'm air quoting all that, but it's actually not a regression. It's a progression of your body noticing problems and things that are, in fact, not okay with you, whether they're an actual, we say not okay as it's really threatening, or it's not okay as in my values have really changed. And I feel like I can hold my values forward and really pay attention to myself now. My encouragement is that sensitivity is a part of progression. Oftentimes. And the world says, don't be sensitive, just buck up and be okay. But I think we're seeing a lot of things, even with sports figures and such, that we herald as people who are super tough, saying, yeah, I'm capable, but it isn't safe and it isn't going to work. And it's okay to not be okay with that. And the world, I think, is shifting into it's okay to not be okay. And to actually live in the experience you're having and honor it. And when we honor it, we tend to get well. it's a wonderful event. So anyway, just want to offer that encouragement.
Yes. And when you say it that, yes. And when you say it that way, of course, it sounds so common sense, but it's a lot easy. It's one of those easier said than done things, right?
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, there's so much pressure. Yeah. There's so much pressure from culture to perform. And when we're talking about people who have had various kinds of abuse, and more specifically in this context, various kinds of abuse under that umbrella of religious or spiritual abuse, they're being pressured to perform in a certain way, and they're being told to do this, or there can be even up to eternal consequences that they're being told will happen in their lives. And so to break out of that pressure to perform,
what a deep, overwhelming threat.
Yes,
absolutely. So for them to come forward and say, I'm going to bank on and take this risk, that I'm not going to let that, I'm not going to feel okay about that anymore. I mean, that is the ultimate act of courage.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And something else that you made me think of while you were speaking and summarizing that so well is I realized, gosh, this was probably like 5 or 6 years ago. I was in this environment for my job. So I was in this work environment with a supervisor figure who oftentimes would trigger me with similarities of my home environment. So just the way this person supervised, I was reminded of my father. And interestingly, I responded then in the same way. Which that makes sense to me. I respond in the same way.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And so I would kind of cower because that person provided something I needed to me. So that person was like, I needed that income. I needed that. I wanted that financial security, that job security. I also loved what I was doing. And so I was like, well, this person has something over me. So I'm going to cower. I'm not going to assert. Now, fortunately, I learned how to assert through that process. It was an incredible learning experience for me, and growth and healing experience. Yeah. But I realized when that was happening, anytime at home, my husband would do something that really wasn't that triggering in and of itself, but maybe alluded to that supervisor that, there's almost like this ping pong thing happening. I would fight, like all out fight. And it was such an over response. And so something that I found interesting through that learning process and being able to reflect on it is we can also respond to different people differently, even if they are similarly triggering us, based on what power we think we've deemed that they have in that situation.
Said. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I call that having like a level 10 response to a level 4 problem.
Yep.
Usually that spousal dynamic is more mutual. You're co-resourcing, right? So ideally, and all the complications of what that can be defined as. So people will feel the freedom to finally fight, to finally say, are you kidding me? No way, and it's not level 10 response because there's no real pain. I'm not saying that. But it's safer for that level 10 pain to emerge and get out. So the problem is, I'm not suggesting it's not real within the person. It is a level 10 pain, but the actual event is a level 4 problem, just as a matter of putting it to numbers tend to help me. So 10 is a high distress number. It's like a pain scale. You might see someone using triaging in an ER or something like, what's your level of pain? Where do you feel it? And so 1 is neutral and fine. So that's where my number value is coming from.
Yes. That is helpful. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about once individuals are triggered, they oftentimes do feel at a loss. And so when they're in that moment, what are some practical suggestions that you offer to your clients for when they're at home and they're in need of supports they can engage on their own right then and there?
I'm going to offer my ideas, but I definitely want the listeners to go, that's not realistic, or that doesn't sound like something I can really do, because I would never say it's prescriptive. It's a suggestion that could help. And I definitely don't want anyone to feel that they're failing if the ideas I'm giving do not fully respond to the pain, but some beginning pieces. And it really depends on, am I at home? Am I in a car? Am I at work? Am I in a social situation with other women? So I think, with other men that are friends of mine, or am I camping? So it could be like lots of different things. One of the things I really care about is a toolbox, and the toolbox just helps with all the 5 senses. This is something that if you can create a toolbox at home, and a toolbox that you can have in your car, a toolbox you can then separately create at the office. This is just something that tends to, I want to call the toolbox like a loving friend. It doesn't judge your reactions. It doesn't need you to even change how you feel. It just wants to lower the distress. So the taking it from the 8, 9, or 10, moving it towards the 4, 5, or 6, and we hope obviously much lower, but I think it's important, just to see it as a friend. And the toolbox really is just addressing our senses, because the body is recovering feelings, right? And pain or distress, sense of threat. It's recovering that as a part of progressing and healing, which is so tough. And so I say, like, we've got to look at, what do you need to taste? What do you need to smell? What do you need to touch? What do you need to hear? What do you need to, so we've got taste, touch, smell, feeling. And there's a 5th one. I'm so sorry. I'm like blanking right now.
Yeah. Taste, touch, smell, feel, hear.
And
so I'm not sure which one. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe
which one you missed the first round.
Okay. So one of my, so the toolbox is, can I plug in music, at work that gives me a sense of calm? And I would love for people to really test their toolkit. Don't wait until you're like at that level 10 and cross your fingers and go, boy, I hope this works.
Yes.
Test it out. Like, some people hate peppermint, some people hate spearmint. So we need to have a bubble gum. We need to have, an orange gum. We need to have, so using a taste element that really makes you feel freed up and relaxed. Chewing gum is helpful because it just gives the body a place of release. It's an activity, but it's also a taste. Also, some people have chosen things that kind of melt in their mouth, like, raisinets or a milk dud, or so they can hold the chocolate, taste the chocolate, then taste the raisin or the caramel, and then just noticing the mouth moving, the substance, and tasting all of the textures and so forth. This is a grounding event because it's a physical experience to be triggered. We want a physical response. Okay. We want a physical solution, not a head solution quite yet. Then something I can see can be a photo of my children, or a photo of, I found it on YouTube, like this beautiful sunset, or this, finding Google images of a forest or something that you can just quickly snap into your phone, but it's a screenshot. And so we're just pulling ourselves in there. And then maybe also having, not maybe, but the next thing is sound. What is we have the sound, we have the image, we have the taste. Touch is a little strange in the sense, like maybe touch is just pressing your palms together. So you inhale, press, exhale, and you inhale with your palms together, kind of like you can do it like you're praying, or you can switch the palms around where the fingers are going in opposite directions. And that's your touch. You're chewing gum. I have essential oils as well for smell. But sometimes people feel like that minty gum, that orange flavored, whatever it might be, really helps with the smell. And some people hold like tokens if they've had, a token like a seashell, or they have, like, someone gave them something like a locket, or they can see that locket and go, okay, my grandmother loves me, or something, I've been thought of. There's that reminds me of a beautiful experience at the beach. That reminds me of my, something that makes them feel safe and loved. In trauma work, we look for not how many days since the last time you were hurt, but how many days you felt safe since the last time you were hurt. Building safety into my day is very important. Tea is great. People feel like that can really center them. Coffee, that smell and taste is really helpful. But if I'm on the road, I can't access that, maybe, you know. So traveling with your toolkit, having it like on your vacations, having it just carrying enough to even hold, like, if in fact there is a concern, I have this, I have access to this. There's a lot of, there are a lot of studies about people who they get a prescription for Xanax and they never use it, but they got the prescription for Xanax, which is a benzodiazepine that calms you immediately within like 10 to 15 minutes from a panic attack. And I'm not against if that is something that needs to happen, but psychologically, similar to the toolbox, they don't have to use the Xanax because they know it's there. They don't have as much panic.
Yes.
So even if you're like, but I'm only using my toolbox like once a year, is that normal? Yeah, because your body goes, she's got a plan, he's got a plan. So I don't need to get to 10.
Right.
That's one idea. Let's say I'm in a meeting and I'm like, people are talking over me and I'm getting dominated, or my ideas are being stolen in a situation, or, someone's getting credit. There's a great technique with regard to, again, palm pressing, but also putting your palms against your knees and just lifting your knee up a little bit. You can do this even when you're at a board meeting or something. And just pressing your palm against your knees. What that's doing is it's activating that core of the body, the psoas muscles, I think they're muscles, and engaging the stomach a little bit, which helps the brain move into the torso.
Okay, I need to try this while you're talking.
Yeah,
I know you can see me, so I'm like, okay, let's try this.
Yeah, and then it's just kind of saying, okay, my body is real. My body is real. And then you're in the meeting and just go, okay, what are 5 things I'm noticing that I can see? What are 4 things I'm hearing? What are 3 things I'm smelling? What is 1 thing I'm tasting? 1 thing I'm feeling physically, and the physical pushing the palms against the knees. There's also Meridian tapping, which people have told me they do under the table. So we'll talk about Meridian tapping too. Going into the meridians are just acupressure points. That's all a meridian means. So it's not deep mindfulness. This is just going, okay, I have a real body, but we're tapping the karate chop points. And you can do that underneath the table if you're talking to someone, but you can also excuse yourself from the meeting and do all the tapping points in a bathroom stall. So people have told me they've done that. Or before a first date with someone, they've done tapping in the bathroom or in their car before they got out. And I have Meridian tapping process. That's a worksheet that's listed under resources on my website, MaryEllenMann.com. You click on resources and then there's healing practices. Just click on that and you're going to see the document for Meridian tapping. And it's harder to tie your shoes than it is to do Meridian tapping. So, because you're literally going through about 10 points on the body. So the top of the head, between the eyes, on the temples, and you're doing 10 to 20 taps under the eyes here. So between the eyes, temples, under the eyes, under the nose, in the chin crease, at the clavicle, close to the clavicle and sternum, and then under the arms, like so. Now, I work a lot with sexually abused people. They have been, so physical stuff can be triggering. Tapping can be triggering, but 90% of my clientele is okay with it. But even then, we just say, let's just go to the points that feel the most activating in terms of calming you down. So it's a non-medicine response. It gives you control. You can do this if you're stuck in traffic as well. You can do like the palm against the knees. You can do palm to palm presses. And the final one is you can do where you take the palm of your hand against your elbow and you're creating kind of a tension between the elbow going down and the palm resisting it. So the elbow going down and the palm resisting it. These are all things that help that amygdala in the back of the brain release from anxiety into the whole body. We want to unlock the anxious response. This is not about saying your anxiety is not important. It's just giving you some ideas so that your body can start to feel like it has access to helping you. Really, you're giving your body access to help you.
Yes. And it's so important because oftentimes we're getting triggered in a situation where
Mm-hmm.
we have to respond in some way. Example, a response in a meeting
Hmm.
is I can excuse myself to go to the restroom, but I do need to return to this meeting.
Yeah.
So what can I do in those 4 or 5 minutes that I have that can
Yeah.
help me until maybe I get home and I can process this more later, but I can't
Yeah.
really fully process this now. So these
Yeah.
are incredibly helpful suggestions. And I
Yeah.
love that as much as I myself have loved using a lap weighted blanket at times, it's not
Mm-hmm.
great to use in a meeting. It's not great to, and it's
Right.
heavy to lug around. Even the lap ones, it weighs
Yeah.
several pounds, and
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's just very functional.
Mm-hmm.
Something I had suggested recently, which was interesting when I was looking back, I'm like, gosh, I wish I had known this a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of putting something sour, like a sour patch or like a lemon
Mm-hmm.
drop in your mouth. And that's
Mm-hmm.
something I've been thinking like, oh, I should just keep those on me just in case, to
Mm-hmm.
pop that in to be like, okay, yes,
Yeah.
I'm here. It kind of like snaps you back.
Yeah.
So same idea with, the
Same
peppermint or
idea.
something. Yeah.
Perfect. I love that. And I haven't done the more sour bitter. I've done more mint
Mm-hmm.
chocolate
Mm-hmm.
combo. So yeah. And then I really think it comes, and some people are like, I hate all things sugar. That's disgusting. So it would be a salt for you, like
Mm-hmm.
something salty, like just having those single packets of almonds that are like wasabi
Mm-hmm.
almonds or salt and vinegar almonds, or
Mm-hmm.
yeah, where they're really letting themselves go, okay, this is a taste that I like. I can
Mm-hmm.
feel it, notice it, my body. And here's the big thing I'm always going for: your body is functional
Mm-hmm.
and it wants to help you. Otherwise, you couldn't taste, touch, see, smell, and hear.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if I am talking with someone right now who's like, I can't see, then I say, well, what can you hear? And your body wants to help you feel grounded and centered and in control. So I'm a big believer in we are built for power and love and a sound mind. We're built to be wise. We're built to feel in control. And so there's nothing wrong with moving in whatever the direction is that helps you regain control. And yes, in my office as a therapist, I have two types of weighted blankets. One's a 30-pound adult couch blanket.
Mm-hmm.
And I specify that just in case people are shopping. You can go to Bed Bath and Beyond, and I hold no endorsement policies or anything like that. But that's just one place. I think Target sells them. Nordstrom Rack sells them
Mm-hmm.
online. And let's see. And then I do a 15-pounder as well. Sometimes I'll add the 15-pounder just over the hips and stomach, and then I have the 30-pounder underneath.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a heating pad that also can be quite comforting, and we can lower the heat and all those things. Some of my clients have been really hurt sexually, so they put the heating pad underneath their hips, the seat of the couch, and that has really helped them feel like, okay, my body is in a safe place. That's soothing. So let's see, and I have essential oils, and you can get them at, like lots of retailers, from Whole Foods and Sprouts. And I don't know, I think I don't know if Trader Joe's, because West Coast, and I love Trader Joe's, but I don't think they have them, but you can buy them online. There are, of course, a lot of MLMs that that sell them.
Yes.
But a lot of vitamin stores will have them. And that's used in here. And of course, then I do EMDR, brain spotting, and other types of therapy techniques. So, but I was going to say, you mentioned something that's really good about okay, I've got to stabilize at work, but then I can process more later. I do believe in guided journaling, not because a person cannot, quote, be trusted to journal just free flow. But a lot of times, what went missing in cult experiences was the sense that I can trust my judgment, right? And
yes,
I can totally know exactly what is going on, right? And I just to restore that, to create stepping stones to restore that, I have something called the resiliency protocol. That's a full journaling event. And that's also on my website, and certainly tailor it. Like, get rid of half of the stuff I suggest if it's not going to work for you. But it just offers some kind of guideposts, like, what's the event? To what degree did it hurt you on a 1 to 10 scale? What are the emotions that come with that? What is the lie or old belief that comes with that? And then what does it normally cause me to do? But then we go into what we call the disputation, which is, I'm going to dispute that this old way of thinking and doing, and say, but is it true 24/7 that I'm always thinking this lie? And generally we're like, well, you're sleeping, you're probably eating, so probably not, no. And then we say, so what is it that you want to know that would bring confidence and counter that lie? And that's where the money is. That's where people are like, oh, I want to know I can trust my judgment. I am fine as I am. I'm lovable and worthwhile. Okay. So then the resiliency protocol goes into things like, where can you imagine a safe place where those things are true? You have a protector, you have a nurturer in that safe place. The protector can be a bear, and the nurturer can be your grandma or your grandpa, I don't know, like good people, your best friend. It can be a fictional character. Mine's a fictional character. And so that's a place where those things can be true. How does that make you feel now? Otherwise, we look at mastery. What are some times in your life where you've known, I trusted my judgment and it worked, So we look at mastery events. So it gives you a chance to really pull your concentration into a new wiring. And the things that are firing are wiring. So if we're firing those ideas, then the wiring just does its own thing. It's a little bit like eating. We don't know how it happens that we eat food and it works, but we don't know how we sleep and it works. But this is the same idea. It works. Those things start to go and become a foundational defense system that grounds you. I have mastered this. I am allowed to know I'm safe. I am allowed to feel content and relieved and strong and confident. And then we say, where do you feel it in your body? If you can't feel it, where would you like to feel it? And how true does it start to feel to you on a scale of 1 to 10? 10 is it's totally true, and 1 it's not at all true. So it's a 2. Okay, so you feel the 2 in your throat, you feel it behind your eyes. What color is with that? And it becomes, we're initializing, right? Where the body is creating all of these connections. And believe it or not, those connections will wake you up in a minute where you are getting an uncomfortable threat feeling. But because of that confidence, the body doesn't go to 10, it goes to 6. And so, gosh, language, we're built for language. We're built to connect dots. And it's a huge part of the gift of our intelligence. But initializing it physically is where the magic is. Like language, where is it in the body? How strong does it feel? True does it feel? What might you start to do now if you're in that situation again?
Yes.
You're writing and you're writing and you're writing. And I tell people, I would not be sitting before you today if 2 things didn't happen: that I read Boundaries by Cloud and Townsend, and that I journaled all the time. I journaled every observation with no guide. I could have filled like a good shelf, of journals with my journals for sure. So that's that processing can also happen live with a therapist. It can be just the journal. It can be the spouse, the best friend.
Before I move on.
Sorry.
Oh goodness. No, that's why you're here.
You are feeling like you just drank from a fire hose. I apologize.
Well, what's super helpful though, is that you have these, again, I'm going to put your website in the show notes. And so people can go back and they can pull this up and even look at it while they replay that portion and be able to, see it in front of them, which I think is so helpful. Yeah. And before I transition to our last question, I want to just go back and really highlight what you said about that we're not designed to be out of control. Like I am not designed to not have control over my body and my
Amen.
thoughts and my
Totally.
emotions. I
You
am
got it.
designed to be in control of those. So when I feel out of control of any or all of those because I have been triggered, my initial step is to regain that sense of control. Then I can go back, like we said, and that's when we can then do the processing. That's where I can then be like, okay, I feel grounded again. I'm present in my body.
Yep.
I'm able to go through and see which thoughts were true, which ones are do not actually apply to this situation. What is my actual safety? And I can go through that process.
Yep.
But I have to stabilize first. I can't do
Yeah.
that in that moment. Just like if I were a 10 on the anger scale and most of my brain has shut off, you're not going to be able to have a rational conversation with me. If I am overwhelmed with anxiety, fear, some sort of trauma response from being triggered, I'm not going to be able to be calm. Obviously, I mean, it sounds silly, but we can expect that of ourselves sometimes. And it's an unrealistic and unfair expectation of ourselves. And so in those moments, Mary Ellen, I love that you are sharing so many ways to really love ourselves and care for ourselves well. And that is it's the most important step because it's that first step. We can't really do any further deeper work if we're not honoring that experience first.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah,
and I know that you and I are mutually huge proponents of support professionals. We believe in them. We believe in them. We believe in finding good ones, and we believe in finding good fits to even tailor that down further. So for anyone who is listening, I know that people in our audience, our listeners, they can feel concerned because of that trust component of who do I trust? Who do I go to? Who is safe? What would you suggest for what they should be looking for, and what are some first steps they can take in finding that person?
First steps. I mean, I think that I want them to write down what they want to feel and what they want to get out of it. What do I want to feel when I'm in their presence, and what do I want to get out of this? And because people can list themselves as trauma specialists or, I don't know, this many years in practice and so forth, which it certainly does matter. But no matter what the description that they have found in like their search, that it is an investment of assessing wisely what is in fact. Am I feeling safe and cared about? Am I feeling believed and supported? And is this person going to help me get more confident with my gut instincts? Because if you really do break down the trauma experience, systems that abuse, people that abuse, and so forth, the victims of that are, I say, if I were to put it into a body experience or an example, it breaks their femur. The femur is your stabilizing bone, so and it takes, like, you have to be in a wheelchair, you have to be pinned, you can't put any weight on it for 6. It's a very big event to have your gut instinct robbed, your ability to trust your instinct robbed from you. So will this person help me build my gut instinct again? And so I would look for licensed professionals because they're held to an ethics standard of care. And certainly, we have to complete CEUs, which are continuing education units. We have to pay for our license. We have to have had supervised hours, not just completing a master's degree. So I care a lot about people who are licensed. I know people go to life coaches sometimes, and I love life coaches for things like, I need to get more organized. I need to understand my work goals, maybe development at another. But when we're talking about trauma, I urge you to consider working with people who are seasoned in the work of trauma, who are trauma informed. And that's a word I'm sure a lot of listeners have heard of, but trauma informed care, that conceptually was birthed into the mental health health world somewhere around 10 years ago, and then really hit the scene in 2016, 17, 18, and on. And so let's make sure we're talking to people who are trauma informed. And trauma informed at the gut, the total core of it is they understand there's not something wrong with you. There's something that's happened to you. And they really help their client stay with that narrative. Like something's happened to you, not something is wrong with you. Mm-hmm. And so that gentle and compassionate, model of care has to be in play for people to feel safe to heal.